Not everything needs to be run by a friend. Insecurity was something that was just very interwoven in who I was, not being too much, not taking up too much space, me and how I looked and as a Black woman, personal style, doing your makeup, your hair, self-doubt in my own abilities to be a surgeon. I took close to a year off of social media last year, trusting myself, trusting my own intuition. If feeling confident and fully secure in yourself feels like it's impossible and so far out of reach, then this video is for you because I've been there. All right, here we are again. I'm very excited. Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Ikunna, and this is my channel, Ikunna MD, where I talk about many things related to mindfulness and medicine and more. So I'm an OBGYN resident living in British Columbia, Canada. And today I'm just going to be discussing my personal self-confidence journey. Insecurity was something that was just very interwoven in who I was for so many years that now truly feeling like it's not that way anymore is so liberating. And I wanted to share how I got to this point. It's also funny because I think a lot of people in my life would argue that I come off as a very confident person, and I always have since I was younger. I would honestly say that truly feeling confident and secure fully in myself feels relatively recent in terms of just fully embodying what that means to me. Do you have my handy dandy journal with me for this one? I had it in one of my other videos, one of my first videos, and I will just have that linked here in case you're interested about not dimming your light. And this is kind of on the same vein. First point that this all leads well into is defining confidence for myself. And I think that when we talk about confidence, a lot of people think about confidence from a more surface level. So thinking more about the superficial image, being confident in how you look. And although that sounds superficial, I also will say that I think it is a really important aspect of confidence. And I think it's because our world is so visual, our society is so visual. As humans, our primary sense tends to be sight. And so the way you look does impact how you experience the world, how you experience society. And so naturally, as you grow up, you start to put weight on that. And I think that comes down to also ourselves and how we see ourselves treating other people. We tend to gravitate towards people that we also find physically attractive in many ways. And I would hope that, we all are a lot less superficial than we probably are. But I think that's a huge part of why so much of our confidence can be impacted by how we feel about our physical selves. At the same time, I would say that our internal and how we feel about ourselves is actually what I think a lot of people struggle with more. I think, especially as I get into my late 20s, I find a lot of people are, I think, more confident in themselves physically, but have a lot of insecurities, especially women, when it comes to how we're doing in our careers, how people perceive us, how people perceive our personalities specifically, and not being too much, not taking up too much space. And that's a huge part of confidence that I want to talk about today as well. For me, ultimately, I would say confidence feels like feeling aligned, feeling like I'm on the right path, a life that brings me joy, that really internal self-assuredness that I personally have always been looking for. I've broken this down kind of into the steps for me. I don't think there's an actual step-by-step way to become confident. I think it's different for everybody. Step one, getting it out of the way. I would say that a lot of this video doesn't fully matter until certain needs are met. So I really always think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs when I think about privilege in society. And for me, I would say that a huge part of why I have confidence is because I have my basic needs met: food, water, shelter, love, and relationships. And it's only after that that I think in the hierarchy, then you move towards self-actualization. And I think that's a lot of where confidence comes from. So I just want to say that, if you're struggling with just, food insecurity, financial anxiety, I think that getting to a place of financial security and having those basic needs met is the first place to start when it comes to having the ability to build confidence that's meaningful to you. So I don't want to ignore that. But I also do think a lot of people are in a good place in their careers and still want to achieve more confidence. And after, having those needs met, which thankfully I have amazing parents, so my needs were always met. But I would say the next step for me was working through more of the superficial insecurities, the physical. I would say that really peaked in high school and undergrad. I think a huge part of that is living life as a Black woman. And I grew up in Canada. But I would say a huge part of that was just growing up as a Black woman, especially in the 2000s, 2010s. We are definitely in a much better place now, I think, with celebrating Black women and, the beauty of Black women. But I definitely think that was not the case when I was growing up. And I think that part of my childhood really carried into my adulthood in terms of just my insecurities. And I wrote about this actually in 2020. I did a piece during the BLM 2020 protests that I still am really proud of. I'll link it down below. I talked a lot in there about how, when you're really little, you aren't super aware of necessarily yourself, your physical body, but then over time, you just become more aware of that and you become more awakened to that part of society and that part of life. And I found going through undergrad in particular that, I just felt really insecure. I felt out of place. This book actually, they said this would be fun. This book written by Eternity Martis really put into words my university experience. And I really recommend reading it, especially for Black women who have attended university. It's about a Canadian university, which I thought was really interesting. It's about Western University. That's where she went for undergrad, I believe. And she really talks in detail about a lot of things that I could relate to. I would say after 2020, we can talk a lot about the Black Lives Matter protests and the aftermath and what things have had a notable impact. But I would say one of the biggest benefits of the Black Lives Matter movement to me was just renewed self-confidence and just seeing more Black women feeling celebrated. And I definitely felt that way. I definitely felt my confidence shoot up a bit because having that societal acknowledgement at the time of my experience really helped me to appreciate myself and celebrate myself and carry myself with more appreciation and care and gentleness, and also just acknowledge the elephant in the room for me, which was that physical insecurity about me and how I looked and as a Black woman. And I feel like over the years, as you get into your 20s, you just get more secure in your personal style, doing your makeup, your hair. I have more of a signature. I went natural, which is a huge part of my confidence. And I talk about that more in my natural hair video. Honestly, I just have a kind of the same makeup routine that I always do, no matter what the occasion is. And it makes me feel good. It makes me feel confident. And just having that routine, that signature. And the bulk of what I want to talk about relates to bringing this energy, the confidence that we often can find in our physical selves into our careers and into other aspects of our lives. So as I was saying earlier, I think a lot of people get to a place where they feel pretty good about how they look, but they either continue to seek external validation in that, or they can't bring that same confidence into their internal selves or into their career. For me, residency was the peak of feeling insecure and just not feeling confident in myself or in my abilities. Before residency, I felt like, I was a book smart person. I tested well. I was, checking the boxes. When I got to residency, I'm doing OBGYN. It's a surgical specialty. I definitely entered it with quite a bit of self-doubt in my own abilities to be a surgeon and to handle acute situations. And that's a huge part of our job, is the technical aspect and the acuity, making decisions quickly and doing things with our hands. And I've never been someone that was good at sports like soccer and ball sports, volleyball, basketball. Honestly, that's one of the number one things that I hear from people when they ask me about going into OBGYN or another surgical specialty. They're like, how did you know that you were going to be good at surgery? And I'm always like, I didn't know. I just trusted that if other people could do it, that I could do it. But then when I was actually doing it and actually having to learn and teach it to myself, it was really, really hard for me. I experienced, negative interpersonal interactions at work, things that were said to me that really affected me and how I felt about myself and my abilities. I experienced performance anxiety before doing an OR and or a surgery. I really was going through it in the junior years of residency and really wasn't sure if I had made the right decision because my confidence was really, really fragile just being a novice. It's hard to be a novice. It's hard to be a beginner at anything, especially something like surgery, especially when a mom and a baby's life are involved. And so how did I get through that? So first and foremost, therapy. I know a lot of people are still unsure about going to therapy. I think if confidence is an issue that you have in your life, therapy is a great place to start. For me, it was just a place where I could really externalize and vocalize my thoughts and my fears, because honestly, what insecurity is often rooted in fear. And I was able to have someone else, a third party that I trusted, really listen to my thoughts, identify them to me, and tell me how those thoughts were not only detrimental to me, but also often not even true. You are not your thoughts. That's a huge part of mindfulness, and your thoughts are not the truth. So when I would go and I'd have an anxious spiral that I wouldn't be able to do a surgery well, or that I would never be a good surgeon, or that I'd never be able to do this procedure well enough, those thoughts were not doing anything for me other than creating fear and shattering my own confidence in myself. And I had to flip that switch. And a huge part of flipping that switch was moving towards a growth mindset. This is another piece of advice that I thought was actually really crucial. And I've written a Medium post about that I'll also link down below. So for me, I became really focused on taking the constructive criticism, taking the constructive feedback, and for one, not taking it personally. For two, applying it quickly, taking that feedback and trying to let go of any feedback that was rooted in personal jabs or just, unprofessional feedback. And they can often have nothing to do with you and everything to do with the person that is delivering that feedback to you. One of the 4 agreements, never take anything personally, will change the game for how you live your life. And that's especially true in the workplace, especially in a high stakes or high stress environment. I also changed my identity, and I started to identify myself, in my own mind to myself as a surgeon, as someone who will be an excellent surgeon. And rather than see myself as one of the ones that wasn't going to be capable of doing it, I saw myself as someone who was capable and could do it. Obviously, do have interest and a life and an identity outside of work. I am so much more than that to myself and to others. I'm a sister and a friend first. I'm a writer. Having those be part of my identity also helps to elevate my confidence. Keeping promises you make to yourself is also so important for confidence. That's also one of the best pieces of advice I've gotten in my 20s. When you make a promise to yourself, like you are going to go to the gym for 30 minutes and you actually show up and do that, and you start small and you keep those little promises, you build a sense of self-assuredness that you got this. You can depend on yourself to get things done in the future. And a lot of things in life are about showing up. They are about just putting the reps in, taking the time, and that's how you really improve. And so when you put the reps in for anything and you show up when you say you're going to show up to yourself, that really can skyrocket your confidence. And finally, a really big part of this for me is trusting myself and my own intuition. I took close to a year off of social media last year, off of Instagram. I still had YouTube, but yeah, close to a year off of Instagram, and really just shut out all the noise and focused on my own personal goals and my own personal identity and what actually mattered to me and what my actual opinions were and what I liked, not getting external validation all the time. I think taking that time off really helped to fuel this for me, trusting myself, trusting my own intuition, trusting my own opinions of myself and what I'm doing. Not everything needs to be run by a friend. Confidence is trusting that you got this and that you can figure this out. And I am a spiritual person. That's something I found has been helpful for me, but I know lots of confident people who don't necessarily subscribe to any kind of spirituality. Trusting your intuition for me is when I have felt the most aligned, the most like I am on the right path, because I can trust my own decisions. I can trust my own impression of things. And of course, I take advice from other people and I ask friends for help, and I will run an outfit by a friend here and there. But what I really mean is that the overall trajectory and course of my life, I trust that I can make those big ticket decisions for myself and that I can navigate whatever comes my way, and that I likely am making the right decisions for me. I
don't feel stalled by indecision. I can take action and move forward and trust that I've got this, trust that I can figure it out. And I think it starts in small ways. It starts from the outfits that you pick for yourself and the other little decisions that you make
every single day without asking someone, without asking the group chat. That is how you build unshakable confidence. To conclude, I will say that I don't have perfect confidence. I do have days of insecurity here and there. I do have moments that shake me, but I'll take 1 to 2 days of feeling insecure and wallowing that a little bit over weeks and weeks and months on end. Like, I can recalibrate and I can shake myself out of it and still come back to feeling aligned. That's everything. I hope this video was helpful. I hope that sharing my journey and sharing my own experience and giving a little bit of vulnerability can help someone else who has felt that way before. I would love to talk more in the comments about this topic, and let me know if you have any questions or any requests. Please subscribe, especially if you got to the end of this video, because I'm sure you will enjoy a lot of the content that's already here and what I have to come. All right. Take care. Bye.